American woman, a little made in Winnipeg rock, the Guess Who, hinting at a decline in American values and hope for the future. Welcome back to our Future of America show. We heard in the last segment from historian Robert Kagan, expressing confidence in the durability of the American way. But the facts are indeed troubling. The American economy is in big trouble. Record spending has led to a record deficit. Unemployment figures from Friday showed a slight decline. Good? Wrong. It was declining, the big number, because hundreds of thousands of Americans had given up looking for work altogether. That's not counted in the official numbers. Look, our next guest is very worried about America. The Obama left-wing spending program, the moral malaise, inflicting a slow suicide on the American people. Already foreseeing a time after America, the book by conservative commentator Mark Steyn. Here's why Steyn thinks Robert Kagan's optimism is just flat out wrong.
I think he's being far too complacent. I think when great powers decline, it's very hard to arrest that decline. At some point within the next 5 to 10 years, China will become the dominant economic power. According to the IMF, that will happen in the year 2016, which means that the fellow Americans elect this coming November will end his term in a position no president has known since Grover Cleveland, in that he'll be the global also-ran. The Chinese think that we are coming not just to the end of the American era, not just to the end of the 2 centuries of Anglophone dominance that began with the Battle of Trafalgar, but actually with coming to the end of a half-millennium European domination. And the world is reverting to its natural order. I really think that the kind of complacency that Robert Kagan, whom I have a lot of respect for, but the kind of complacency that's present in his thesis that somehow the 1950 American moment is forever will be disastrous if my friends on the right, including Mr. Kagan, really believe that.
Okay, Mark, let me be Canada-centric here. If America continues to be in decline, what does it mean for the people in my country?
Well, I would say that Canada and Australia are the least unhealthy Western nations at the moment. But the fact of the matter is that when the United States slides off the cliff, it lands with a much bigger thump than Iceland does, or Portugal, or Greece, and it drags down everything with it. I think Canada is entitled to expect America to get serious. I mean, I very much liked the Prime Minister's attitude over the Keystone pipeline. That if the United States if Obama wants to play politics with that to appease some upscale twerps at the Sierra Club, then you've got to take him at his word. That the guy is basically so invested in the most absurd posturing, you're going to have to adjust to the realities of a post-American world and prepare to ship that oil to China. The fact of the matter is, if America's truly prepared, is truly willing to commit suicide, which is what this decline is, then the trick for Canada and Australia and the few remaining functioning parts of the West is not to be underneath when the whole thing goes off the cliff.
So you can see a scenario where America commits suicide, where the decline becomes precipitously worse as China surpasses America, but Canada still prevails as an economic power?
Well, I think Canada. I mean, I think you have to live in the world. You have to adapt to the world you live in. Where Robert Kagan goes wrong, for example, is thinking that the British domination transferring to the American domination was some kind of great accomplishment. At a certain point after the Second World War, it became more important for Ottawa and Canberra and New Delhi to get a good hearing in Washington than in London. Basically, the United States inherited Britain's imperial networks. That's why there are RCAF officers stationed at NORAD in Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado. But basically, that's the smoothest transfer of global dominance in history. A transfer of global dominance from economic dominance from the United States to China, when you have also have, say, Russia mischief making, you have the Muslim world going nuclear, the idea that that is going to be anything like as smooth as the British-American transfer of power is, I think, preposterous. And when Robert Kagan makes that comparison, I think he makes himself look faintly ridiculous. The fact of the matter is that's the smoothest transfer of dominance in global history. Canada was a great beneficiary from that. It's the merest tweak to reorient yourself from London to Washington. When you're having to deal with Beijing, when you're having to deal with a resurgent Russia, when you're having to deal with a nuclear Iran and the new caliphate, there's a whole bunch of other problems there. And I think it's not that we're passing from American order to Chinese order, it's that we'll be passing into a world without any order whatsoever.
All right, Mark, let's go with the suicide, the metaphor. You're saying America's committing suicide, and you seem to be saying it's inexorable at the moment. So let me try to play with the suicide thing for just a moment, if you don't mind.
Right.
Let's say America is the person who's taken the pills and drinking the scotch and about to pass out and die. Fine. Right. What do we do? What does America do to take the pills away? How do we reverse this process? Is there a solution that Dr. Steyn has for the USA?
Yeah, I'd say stop it now. I think we need to quit cold turkey when a guy is in that situation. I'll give you a very good example. The border crossing I cross most often is a Quebec-Vermont border post between Mansonville, Quebec and North Troy, Vermont that gets 2 cars an hour. And on the northern side of the border, Her Canadian Majesty makes do with a one-room hut. On the southern side, Uncle Sam has replaced his own one-room hut with a $17 million thing that looks like the Starship Enterprise. And for 2 cars an hour, they've widened the crossing to 8 lanes of traffic. Now, I went through, I was having lunch with a friend at Lac Brome, and I went through the border crossing afterwards, and the guy came out in the full Robocop, and I rolled down my window, and I looked at him, and I said, "You don't think this impresses anybody, do you? Because when you're the brokest nation in history, and you can't stop yourself even from spending $17 million on a nothing little 2-car-an-hour border crossing, you're just making yourself look like the biggest idiot on the planet." And so it's all very well to say, well, $16 trillion of debt, every American child is born owing $200,000 of debt. These all seem sums that spiral out of control. If you can't actually nail it, drive a stake through this stuff at every little itsy-bitsy overspend that goes on in America, you can never bring this country, you'll never be able to save America. There is this excess. The 40-car motorcade is a joke. God bless him, Prince William and his lovely bride, they toured Canada in a Royal Canadian Air Force bone shaker with a shower stall that you'd get at a hunting camp up in Labrador. And it was good enough for Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cambridge, but when the President of the United States pretends to visit a soda fountain on Martha's Vineyard, he needs a 40-car motorcade. You make yourself look like the jokes of the world. You've got to get a grip on this stuff.
All right, so Mark Steyn, you're saying that regardless of who wins in November, unless the president and the Congress take a meat axe to that debt, it's all over. It's suicide.
Yeah, basically by the middle of this decade, U.S. taxpayers will be funding the entire cost of the Chinese military just through the interest payments on the debt. In other words, that's like getting your MasterCard statement at the end of the month and just being able to pay off the interest, not the debt itself. Just the interest payments on the debt will be funding the entire cost of the Chinese military. There's no precedent for that anywhere in history. In the decline of the Roman Empire, the Roman Senate never attempted to propose that Roman taxpayers should fund the Visigoth military in perpetuity. And if they had, it would have been a hell of a lot cheaper because the Visigoths just had a few fur pelts and spears. They didn't need it. It wasn't a big buck item. What we have here in its decadence, I think in the grotesque decadence of the overspending, is really quite unparalleled throughout human history.
At this point, the only thing I'm left to say is, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, house to play.
Exactly.
Mark Steyn.
That's the territory we're in.
Thanks so much for the visit, I think. Mark Steyn, ladies and gentlemen.